Hey guys, this is Carly and I'm going live. I'm kind of getting used to this whole going live thing. And as you guys know, I've been hyping this up on social media for about a week and a half, 2 weeks now. I am fired up about today's topic. So today's topic is about the financial literacy gender gap. I'm going to give a special shout out to my sister right now who just joined. And so I've been wanting to talk about this topic to my followers and a lot of you who I've been engaging with. I know you have young girls, and I know that we've been talking about this financial literacy gender gap and how it might affect your girls in the future. So there are a couple of things we're going to address today. And so if I could just break that down quickly, it's what is the financial literacy gender gap? Why is there one? Where does it come from? Where does it stem from? And what can we do about it? How do we close it? What are some solutions? And so I'm hoping as more people come in and you guys are going to start thinking critically about these questions, you can also put your suggestions into the comments, because this is not something that just one person can solve, right? This is something that we all need to put our heads together and try to think about how to close this financial literacy gender gap. As a woman myself, this is critical. As someone who wants to have young girls in the future, this is something we really need to address. So first, thank you for coming to my live, whether it is actually on Instagram right now or if you're catching the replay. If you're here, I know that you already care about our young girls. I know that you care about women and the women in your lives. And you care about financial literacy. You also care about transforming other people's lives, their futures. Okay, so if you didn't know, my name is Carly Ubaldini. I am a financial literacy educator, and I run a coaching program that helps parents teach their kids about finances. And we are going to get into the financial literacy gender gap right now. So the first thing we have to address is, what is it? What is this financial literacy gender gap? The simplest way we can explain it is that women lack the fundamental knowledge about finances more often than men. Okay, so this means that men know about finances more than women do. So this hurts us. It hurts our families. It hurts our girls as they grow up. And I just want to put this into perspective. We know now, science says that women live longer than men. Okay, so if women are living longer than men and women don't have the financial knowledge that we need, what happens when, let's say, a husband passes away, or someone who you depend on for your income passes away, or you receive an inheritance from maybe a grandfather or a great aunt, but you're not sure what to do with it? And these are important questions because we need to do better at educating our girls to make sure they know what to do when they get older. Now, women, we're not necessarily always in charge of our financial lives. Sometimes there's a failure to plan for retirement, and there's many reasons behind that, or we're less likely to know what to do when retirement comes, okay? How to handle that money. And if we're dependent on, let's say, a husband's income or a partner's income, and they do pass away, and I know that there are a lot of stay-at-home moms out there. I know that even if you're working part-time or you're working full-time, so you have to be able to know about your finances and also teach your own kids about them as well. A lot of times when someone passes away and there's money involved, which there usually is, right? Even when you say have a house in your family and it's been there for a couple of generations, and the people who own the house pass away, or it goes to the next kin. So what do you do if everyone decides they want to sell the house? Who's going to be handling that? Who knows how to handle that money the best? And my goal is to increase women's financial knowledge, to be able to say, hey, I can do that. I can handle that. I've learned about this and I'm putting it into action and I feel confident enough to handle this money. So women are also less likely to own assets themselves and less likely to create wealth, whether it's through securities or stocks. And then taking wealth out of the picture, okay, just let's not even say about like getting rich or anything. Let's just think about financial well-being. And when we talk about financial well-being, this means just a sense of peace, a peace about your finances. Okay, so you're not stressed out. Of course, money is stressful. Certain situations are stressful, but to get to a place of peace, that is the goal. We want that. But right now, that's not happening for girls. That's not happening for women across the world. And this upsets me. We cannot settle for this. We can't just keep ignoring this. And that's why I am doing what I'm doing. So I had a really interesting conversation about a study recently that I found. And so the study, I'll tell you what it's called and who it's by. But I mean, just the name of the study is The Fearless Woman or The Fearless Girl. And that is such a striking name for a study, right? So this is the Fearless Woman study that was conducted by the George Washington University School of Business. Okay, they have their own Center of Financial Literacy Excellence. And this study, it shocks me to the core. And they found that women lack confidence and women lack financial knowledge to be able to make sound financial decisions. And furthermore, they said that the lack of confidence accounts for 1/3 of the financial literacy gender gap. The financial literacy knowledge gap accounts for 2/3 of it. Okay. And so the results of this are pretty striking. They say that women are less likely to own stock. And in their research, they said that 20% of those who participated in their research, 20% of those women own stock, whereas the men in their study, 34% of the men surveyed own stock. Now that's a 14% difference right there. 14% difference, and that's going to carry men a whole lot farther, okay, because they own stock and they are creating that wealth. And so that is pretty much the whole premise of that study. That is the big result that they found, I should say. And I was taking a look at the 1/3 of 1/3 of the financial literacy gender gap is because of a lack of confidence. And I was just curious about that, because when I think about this, I think it's more than that. And of course the study goes into it a little bit more, but from my perspective, I think that women, they lack more than that. Not only do they lack the financial literacy or the knowledge, right? We know that. They also lack, in my opinion, the opportunity to either A, be earning money as much as men. Okay, we know about the gender pay gap. Okay, that's another topic for another time. But I also think that women lack the encouragement, and that kind of feeds into confidence too, because without that encouragement, without that motivation too, how do you develop confidence? And I think it's a lack of assets, a lack of resources. And I also think there's a huge lack of exposure. This plays into the lack of financial knowledge, the exposure piece, and I'll get to that later in my talk, because that is really, really crucial. And a lot of my solutions are going to be based on that. All right, so one of the GW professors, her name, because I want to give her credit, okay? She is a brilliant professor of economics, and her name is Anna Maria Lusardi. She says, women know more than they think they know. And this was evident in the survey because They said, or Anna Maria explained, that women tend to disproportionately choose "I don't know" when answering financial literacy questions. Now, to back up a little bit, the survey or the research, it's based on three different questions that was asked of men and women. And it measured knowledge about interest compounding, inflation, and risk diversification. Okay, so those were the three core components to measure financial literacy. Now, Anna Maria is saying that when "I don't know" or "do not know" is not an option. Not an option. It's not on the table. You cannot answer that in the research or the survey. Women choose the correct answer more frequently. They choose the correct answer more frequently, so that just shows women do have some knowledge, but there's other factors there that are contributing to the financial literacy gender gap. Now, that's saying that we're not sure of ourselves. And why aren't we sure of ourselves? In my opinion, it's because we lack the exposure. I said that earlier, and to dive deeper into that, I think we lack the opportunity to put what we know into practice. Because if you are putting what you know into practice, you know what's working well, you know what your results are, you're going to gain that confidence in making sound financial decisions. But if you are not given that opportunity, if you don't have the resources or the assets to put it into action, then you are not going to be confident in your own knowledge, right? The study says that if women had if women had just as much confidence as men, the financial literacy gap would substantially shrink. Female stock ownership would rise. You have to either increase financial literacy or increase confidence in making those sound financial decisions. And better yet, they said, if you increase both the financial education and the confidence, stock ownership would rival that of men. All right, so we've talked a lot about financial literacy and the gender gap so far, but we really haven't talked about where it comes from. And this perplexes me. I was just brainstorming, thinking so hard about this because I'm trying to think, where did this come from? Where did this gap start? And I kept thinking, history speaks volumes. And here's the premise. Girls are not as exposed to money as boys are. History tells us, I have a few fun facts about history, actually. So, because I'm curious, I was like, when was the word businesswoman first used? When was it officially recognized? And according to Merriam-Webster, it was first used in 1827, the word businesswoman. And I was trying to look up, when was the word businessman first used? And I couldn't really get an accurate picture of this because, of course, Merriam-Webster has a date there. And they said 1803, that's when it was officially used. But it's only officially used according to the definition in Merriam-Webster. But we know that there have been far more businessmen in the world across all ages or for so many years that businessman, there's tons of other terms. There's tons of other words you can say for a businessman. And also, back in the day, when you even think of someone running a business, it was just, you instinctively would have thought a man. And the fact was that women didn't have the rights to own a business. Women really did not have the rights to do many things. We all know this up until the 20th century, right? So one interesting tidbit that I knew, but I had forgotten what the act was called, and it was called the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. This was in the 1970s, okay? In the 1970s, this was when women were finally able to apply for a credit card without her husband's consent, without her husband, right? So this was, I believe, exactly 1974. 1974, that was not that long ago. And then we had in the 1980s, half of the bachelor degrees awarded in the world were to women. So in the 1980s, that's when college educated women were coming out. And when you have women coming out of college, they're earning higher salaries. So salaries started to go up. Now in the 1990s, that's when you had more women entering the workforce. And this means that they were starting to be more exposed to money, starting to be exposed to maintaining money. Now in the 2000s, we have an interesting phenomenon. We have the rise of female entrepreneurs like myself. And when I say interesting phenomenon, I think it's amazing. I think it's awesome. And you see different female entrepreneurs popping up in every industry. And how cool is that? So that whole exposure thing I was talking about earlier, our young girls are going to start getting more exposed, and they should be already getting more exposed, just because the workforce is changing. Businesses are changing. Women are really starting to lead the way. I also wanted to address the family unit, the family structure. What are we signaling to our young girls? What are we exposing them to, of course, and what are we teaching them? What are we actually teaching them? Let me ask just some questions, because I know I have a few people on this live right now. Who goes to the bank in your family? Who is in charge of the household budget? Who pays the bills? Who usually takes out their wallet at dinner? I want you to think of these, right? Think of what your answer is. The answer, the majority of the time here, is that dad does this. The man of the household does this, right? Now, I'm not putting a judgment on this. This isn't wrong by any means. I'm not saying that men shouldn't be able to do this. I'm not saying that at all. But the majority of the time, the father of the household is the one in charge of the finances, right? So let's think about that a little bit more. It goes back to the whole exposure thing. The fact is, girls are not seeing women handle money. They don't usually see mom taking out her wallet, doing the calculations for the budget. They don't usually see mom worrying about the stocks, right? They don't usually see mom watching the financial news. So if it's really girls are only seeing men worry, think, earn the money sometimes in certain families, this is where we are running into a little bit of friction, right? So our girls aren't seeing it. Our girls are not being exposed to women handling money. And guess what? They're not being exposed at home, and they're definitely not being exposed in school or pop culture, right? And so if they're not learning this stuff, they're not being exposed to finances, money, handling money, creating wealth. If they're not being exposed to it at school or at home, that's why we have the financial literacy gap. And they're not receiving any financial education. We know this because schools rarely have a class about finances. Maybe, if you're lucky, an elective in high school. If you're even luckier, an accounting elective in high school. But it's really too late at that point. High school is too late to be teaching your kids about finances. So where are they going to learn about money? I said this earlier. It's at home. At home. So this is why we have to change the narrative around financial education, especially for our young girls. So the study we just learned about earlier, The study, they put forth some solutions. And I'm going to take my own spin on those because I'm really focusing on how do we teach our kids about financial literacy. And the study speaks more to just women in general. But here's my take. So they have 5 solutions here. The Fearless Girl Study recommends taking charge of your financial life by setting short-term and long-term goals. And of course, this is great, right? And in a different live that I had recorded, I said that summer is a great opportunity to talk about goal setting with your kids. My easiest way to do this is your kids are probably creating a summer bucket list, right? This summer is different from last summer. Look at that summer bucket list, see which ones might cost some money, and have that conversation about how do you save enough money for that activity. Set a goal for that activity. How are you as the parent, or how is your son or daughter going to be saving money, earning money for that particular bucket list item? Now, the study also says band together with other women on a quest to improve financial literacy. I just love the words they use there. So the fact that you're here, you are watching this, you are banding together with other women. Guess who? It's me. And I want you to connect with me. I want you to stay here, stay in this conversation, stay in our little community of those who care about financial literacy and increasing it. You care about increasing financial literacy, and so does everyone else tuning in here. So does this whole community that I've created. Tap into trusted financial education resources. Knowledge is power. This is one of the Fearless Girl Studies solutions. Knowledge is power. Okay, now this isn't exactly a solution. It's just a statement to me. So I want to say that's why I created Perfect Sense. Perfect Sense is what's going to help you teach your own kids about money. Perfect Sense is here for you when you're ready to take that next step. The next one was find role models. Talk to them. Okay, so in my life, I know that I can turn to certain people to talk about finances. I can talk to my coworkers or my ex-colleagues, people or women who are in the same industry as me, maybe people who are in the same walk of life as me. I would turn to them, ask them about how they're handling their finances. How are they teaching their kids about finances? Then the study says, remember to be fearless. And when we're saying be fearless, it reminds me of the Fearless Girl statue in New York City, right? I mean, most of you have probably either seen or heard about this Fearless Girl statue. And it is an incredible statue. It's, if I had to guess, the little girl is about 6 to 8 years old. And she's standing, or she used to be standing, in front of the charging bull with her hands on her hips, looking defiantly at the charging bull or at the New York Stock Exchange. And this symbolizes that knowledge is power, that girls are resilient, girls can be a part of the financial market, the financial sector, right? And that girls can really do anything. It's a really powerful statue, and I do hope that in the future I'll be able to take my kids to that statue to say, look, there are tons of people, tons of girls, tons of women who are entrepreneurs or who are creating wealth, who are stockbrokers, who are accountants, who are in the financial world. But you also have just your regular household mom working the budget. You have part-time women working part-time jobs, right? And they're really trying to figure out how to make their bills stretch. This money is not supposed to be some type of mysterious thing that only is for the wealthy or for the knowledgeable. No, money and handling money and the knowledge about money is accessible and should be accessible to all. So my number one recommendation, and these are going into my solutions now, so apart from the Fearless Girl study, my number one recommendation is exposure. Exposure and putting what you learn or putting what your daughters learn into practice. Because without the repetition, without actually putting it into practice, that knowledge can easily be wiped out, easily be forgotten, right? So we want to retain that knowledge. So one of these ways we can do this is you want to start small, okay? So we talked about stocks earlier. Could you create a lesson about stocks for your daughter? Could you just talk about stocks with your daughter? Could you create a lesson about investing? What is investing? And it doesn't have to be crazy, you guys. But the next step is to actually find a way to put this into practice. Now, online, there are free financial resources, right? And I know that there are some stock market simulators out there, or there's a stock market game, or if you feel up to it, you can create one yourself. I am an educator on OutSchool, and I have a stock market class. There are ways to find a way to put it into practice. And my next tip is to inspire your girls. Again, go to that Fearless Girl statue. Go to New York City and go down to Wall Street. Or go to your local financial district. You could also take your child to the bank with you. You can actually go to the ATM and teach your child. Use it as an opportunity to teach your child about money. And another thing that I was thinking of is that you can encourage your young girls to start babysitting. And I know that babysitting is like everyone's instinctive job when you get to high school, right? Everyone wants to be a babysitter. But there's a reason for that. Two things. One is that you learn responsibility for others, right? You're in that first time in your life where you're actually caring for people that maybe aren't related to you. Big deal, big deal. And the second thing there is that you receive money. You are paid money, and you would be figuring out, what do I do with this money? And that's an opportunity as a parent to coach your child through that, to coach your child through, how do you save? How do you budget? What does this money mean? What are some goals you have? It's a conversation about, you could really say anything. What about saving for college, right? Now, I really think that you should give your kids some money to spend. And this was apparent in my family, and it was a good tool to help us learn about money. I have a blog post about my first time learning about taxes, about just, I was buying like a bag of chips, and I had no idea that there was going to be some tax added onto it. And I was maybe 5 or 7 years old at the time. But it's because my mom had given me $1 to spend. And she said, go ahead, get whatever you want. It has to be under $1. So I walk up to the cash register, and I actually have 2 bags of chips, because the sign said 2 bags for $1, 2 for $1. Now, little old me, I was so excited to get some chips, and I go up to the register, and I'm mortified. The woman tells me it's $1.05. I did not know what to do. I had no idea that there was something added onto the dollar. So this was a learning lesson for me, a learning lesson. So you can do this with your own child, and maybe it doesn't have to result in your child being mortified. Definitely not. You can be there with your child. You can coach them through, hey, you're going to go up to the cashier, and whatever the amount is, let's say we're buying groceries together, you're going to count the money and give it to the cashier, right? Try to use cash for this too. Credit cards are okay. You can also have a learning experience about credit cards there. But really, I think it should be with cash. And so you hand over the cash, or your child hands over the cash. They have to interact with the cashier. make sure they get the correct change back, right? And this is just exposing them to handling money. It's such a little way, but such an effective way if you give your child that opportunity. Now, when you're out shopping, let's say for a new dress, right? And maybe your little girl is there with you. Use that as an opportunity to talk about money again, talk about budgeting for the dress. You can also start introducing, if your child doesn't know yet, the different coins, the different bills that you have. You can talk about currency in general. All right, so it is about the 30-minute mark, which is where I leave off my Instagram lives. If you enjoyed this chat, head on over to perfectsense.thinkific.com, or you could just click the link in my bio. I want you to sign up for my weekly newsletter, which is where you get even more content just like this. Even more content about financial literacy and some good bonus content there too. You can also DM me. I'd love to hear your thoughts. How did you enjoy this? What did you learn from it? What are some actions you're going to take from this? And then in the future, stay tuned because I'm going to be inviting you all to a special invitation-only training about teaching financial literacy to our kids. I'm so grateful to be here. It was awesome to interact with everyone, to see everyone coming in, and I hope to see you guys soon. One last thought about money, entrepreneurs, and our girls. If you have time for a Netflix movie, it's a documentary that I recommend. It's called Madam C.J. Walker. The documentary is actually called Self-Made, about Madam C.J. Walker. I highly recommend that movie. She was the first African-American entrepreneur. And not only that, she was the first self-made millionaire in the United States. Okay? Super powerful stuff. So again, I hope you enjoyed this, and we will be talking soon. Thanks for joining, guys. Bye-bye.